Greetings and welcome back, everyone. This is Into the Nexus, the podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. I'm Garrett, here as always with my counterpart, Kyle. I still can't figure out if I'm C-3PO or you're R2-D2 or who, what. I've got Star Wars on the brain. Sorry, everybody. But we are joined by a much requested guest. Finally managed to make our schedules align. Zanehyde is here. Zane, welcome to Into the Nexus.
Hello, and thank you guys for having me. This was a fun one. I didn't expect to be on a podcast at such a young age. I was thinking at 40 years old, somebody would want to invite to speak to me about drying dishes and something other boring. But instead, we're talking about Heroes of the Storm, which is quite fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm sorry that this was your first show and not like NPR.
We ruined it. But, you got to get your feet wet, and NPR is waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it turned out to be a hell of a day to record an episode of this podcast early. Hell of a week to decide to record this podcast early. Kyle, you and I, we were having some talks off air, as we do, especially when American-based holidays are around the corner, because it tends to interfere with our weekly schedule of recording on Thursday. It certainly tends to be the case when that holiday is Thanksgiving, and it happens on a Thursday every year. We're like, all right, cool. What are we going to do? Well, we got to record early. We got to do it on a Tuesday. That's our only option. All right, we want to get Zanehyde on. Let's see if it works. Rad, it does work. He can record late. Super cool. Well, what are we going to talk about? Well, we have Zanehyde on. We've never had him on before. So it's easy. We'll talk about his guides and tanking and tier lists and everything, because we're going to get a patch on Friday. There's no universe or anything else. There's any other breaking news.
There's no universe in which they decide to drop absolutely everything in the same 2-day period.
You're damn right, Zanehyde. You get it. You get it. Welcome into Nexus. You fit in very nicely.
Thank you.
Yeah, holy crap, y'all. Deathwing's on the PTR. Nexus Anomaly is on the PTR. I think the event's on the PTR too. If it is, I wasn't paying attention. All I wanted to do was try Deathwing and try Orbs and queue into quick match, which I have been able to do the easiest since the PTR was originally opened. Like, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago at this point? Mm-hmm. The quick match queues, if you're not trying to play Deathwing right now, on the PTR are delightfully short. If you want to go get your PTR on and you want to play against actual other human beings, I don't think there's been a better time than now. My God, it's great.
Wow. Are you saying that Deathwing is a popular hero, Garrett?
You think, Kyle? You think? I mean, they might as well just trot out N'Zoth as a core replacement hero. I think that's the only other option they could possibly do to bring in at least as many people as it seems Deathwing is bringing to this game.
Dude, I am so ridiculously excited. I feel refreshed. It's been a weird year for video games. As people who cover video games, we've been so reserved. We understand the engine held you back, Anthem. Balance wouldn't allow this. Video games are always telling us why they can't do things. So for the Heroes development team to be like, yes, we can. Big old dragons just feels good.
I'm having a good time. I'm also having a really good time killing big old dragons.
Well, yeah, they're out of position.
Dude, as I said, you want a quick queue right now, you quick match in PTR, and you do not select Deathwing, and you are guaranteed, if you want to learn how to fight alongside a Deathwing and you want to learn how to fight against the Deathwing, go play a PTR. Every game, guaranteed, gonna happen.
It is a great time to be a Tychus player. It is a great time.
I had some sexy Sylvanas games.
That'll do.
Do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior, Giant Slammer Sonya? Because
yes, I did.
I have a game last night. So good. I logged so many damn games on the PTR last night. If you can't tell, I'm giddy. I've also done 2 other podcasts today, so I might be a little punch drunk. But I had such a phenomenal time on the PTR last night. This was the first time in a while that Heroes of the Storm kept me up past my bedtime. I usually budget my time with Heroes to keep it during sane hours, but I couldn't step away. I just kept getting queues. I was like, what's a 2-minute queue? What's one more game? Why not? Just keep doing it. And I just kept getting the games, kept getting experiences, kept trying to kept getting to try new heroes and get a feel for the XP globes. And so, yeah, I'm just stoked. I'm ready to talk about it. So before we get into this week's news, we do have thanks in order, and that is to those fine folks supporting this podcast with their hard-earned dollars over at patreon.com/ITN. If you like our podcast, if you like what we're putting out here at Into the Nexus and you want to support it, the Patreon is the best way to do it. And to some of our most recent patrons, we'd like to thank Bebop, Jeremy Greenwald, and Idanya. Thank you very much for the support. Check out patreon.com/ITN to support the show, get access to the patron-only Discord, and join in our monthly patron games. Now, with that said, there's so much to talk about. Let's do it. This week's Heroes of the Storm news coming at you.
We're on, boys! Ha-ha! Let's liven up this place!
The moment is upon us.
Yes, I'd mana tap that.
All right.
I knew that was coming. It's still
Welcome to the show.
Yeah. So honestly, it was a toss-up. Couldn't decide. Do we want to start the show talking about experience gloves? Or do we want to start the show talking about Deathwing? We figured, screw it. Let's talk about experience gloves because that's going to affect everyone, no matter what hero you're playing, what hero you're playing against. Experience globes are coming for the Nexus, and they are going to drastically change up the way we soak. So here they are. We have patch notes from the PTR, which spell out in explicit detail just how many special interactions there are. Because Kyle, you and I have been spending basically every single episode since BlizzCon talking about ways we think they may make exceptions. Heroes we think that will have special interactions with the way this new XP Globe system would work. And it turns out what they told us at BlizzCon, that's it. Those are the special exceptions. There's nothing else.
No lane clear through blizzards. No summons getting the XP globes for you. No Nazebo.
No Asmodan Q, no Falstad Boomerang, not a thing to be found that can actually soak the wave at distance. Like, ranged heroes just got nerfed into the fucking ground. Just across the board.
And Abathur.
Poor Abathur.
Poor Abathur.
Soaker.
Poor Lost Vikings.
I'm here to show
What was that?
You know, I'm not too sad about ABBA, but I know I'm not the player for it. I want to hat people. I want to clone. I want to do ABBA busy business. The whole double soaking thing was a tool that was invented by HGC. It existed in the game and came to us and was forced onto Abathur. And I went, well, no, thank you. It's like when Gazlo got to target his turrets. I just said, that's too busy. I just want to fart around on Gazlo. I'll go off somewhere else.
Yeah.
But poor ABBA.
Yeah. Now, I oddly enough had a lot of Abathurs in my games on PTR, and they didn't go too bad. What did happen, and again, this is like super early, super anecdotal. Obviously, like we've had a day and a half on PTR.
Yeah.
Definitely don't have like hardcore stats to pull from or anything of that nature. But at least in my experience on the PTRs, and if nothing else, this should be a preview of what to expect, at least in our first week with this kind of update. If you end up in a game with Abathur, is that don't rely on the hat coming in to save you. Because while we didn't fall too behind in XP, it did mean that I noticed at least the Abathur players in my games were spending a little bit, significantly more time hatting whatever lane wasn't currently covered. Because the hat is how you gather these XP orbs if you're playing Abathur.
It's worth mentioning how ridiculously small the range is on these orb collections. It is, it's Tychus range, auto attack. It's
6.0 units. It's minuscule. It actually felt awful. I didn't realize how short range it was going to be. Playing melees, playing tanks, you actually have to step right adjacent to where the thing died. Like, there's no way in hell it's actually 6.0 units. It's way shorter than that. The leash is awful.
It's small, and you got it's a lot like Orbs in that way. In at least a 4-man setting, you might be yelling at your tank to get out there and grab the XP that you just made because he has to go out that far to grab it. And I think it's really cool. We got Zanehyde this week because you're the tank man.
Absolutely.
What do you think is going to happen here with the XP orb?
The average level of playing the game has to go up, and it's getting forced up artificially because there's going to be a big, shiny visual indicator that tells your tank exactly what to do. Like, range heroes aren't stepping up to get globes. Rhaegar's could, but no other supports can. So it basically means you actually have to work together, and whether you want to or not, you need to depend on your tank to actually get the EXP.
Don't you step to my boy Uther, because he's going to step up and get those.
Absolutely.
But he's basically a bruiser.
No. Main tank. Uther is a main tank.
There we go.
Everything is a main tank until proven otherwise.
Fair. Yeah. So I guess kind of like we'll round the table this as much as possible, because I'm sure we all have long-winded opinions. But Zanehyde, you are, I guess we'll start what's your gut reaction? Do you like or dislike XP clips?
Oh, they buffed me directly? Great.
There we go.
Kind of. So do you mean they buffed you as a tank, or they buffed you as a player with a certain understanding level of the game?
Yes. Literally both of those. Like, I don't know how else to say it besides, if you are a macro player, rejoice, your macro just got better. And if you are not a macro player, it is time to learn how to be one, because everybody is now a macro player, whether they want to be or not.
I think that's really fair. I'll go next, and then I'll go to you, Kyle, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I really didn't think I was going to like this. And I am surprised, because my gut reaction is that I really like this. I thought there was going to be a lot more stress, and there certainly can be to a certain degree. I had players, especially Deathwings, with that damn flame breath, just leaving XP to the birds. Just out there to not be collected, and so on and so forth. I'm sure that will get better as when Deathwing is no longer the newest, most requested hero in the history of the entire freaking game, and everyone just wants to play him, and he's represented in essentially all of our games. But I think that's going to extend beyond Deathwing. I bet months after this, we're still going to see Ganis drop blizzards and walk away. As an example, I'm not coming after you, Ganis. I'm one of you. But as a solo lane player, as someone who has headed for the XP game for a while, I don't know why I wasn't looking more forward to this. Because even in the worst case scenarios, like when those Deathwings were flame breathing the entire lane and just leaving the XP behind, I could do something about it. I could go up and get it myself. In most cases, unless I'm bottom lane and it's top lane, okay. But in most scenarios, if you're kind of used to flitting between lanes of rotating, you can kind of make up for people who don't quite get this new system. And if your team is all functioning as a well-oiled machine, and especially as you get into kind of like later game scenarios, I'm not talking like level 23, I'm talking like level like 16 to 20. When you get into those scenarios and waves are still crashing against each other in unattended lanes, because that tends to happen around that time, I found it surprisingly relaxing. I was like, oh, cool. Well, we have a breather. Whereas previously, Kyle, you and I talk about those moments all the time over the entire course of this show, is like when you get into those situations where every camp is taken, there's no objective to be seen, everybody's up, it's not time for a fight, what do you do? Well, now you can just calmly go and collect those XP orbs in that unattended lane. I was getting in this weird place of zen that I wasn't expecting to find myself last night. I was like, I'll just go pick up the globes and yada, yada, yada. And if it's an unattended lane and you can't make it up to get the globes, it's not the end of the world, because if it's unattended, that means they're not getting them either. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. So I'll now pass to you.
You like
Kyle.
collecting things.
I do. Well, not necessarily. And I think that played a little bit into my apprehension about this anomaly, which I'm still going to have to train myself to just start saying anomaly as a thing that is in the game. But yeah, I was really kind of getting into the groove of how this, I don't know. I thought it would be a little more difficult to adjust to this change, and at least in the 5 or 6 games I logged on the PTR last night against real people. I had some tri-mode games too, or AI games. I really liked it. I feel like I got the hang of it really quickly. It didn't end up being as big of a shift in my playstyle as I kind of thought it would be, or at least in the mentality of all of it. So, what do you think, dude?
I like it because it's going to bring back solo laners or tanks that cover the lane. Not that, of course, your Maevs and your Genjis and Zeratul can't just teleport out, but then you're making an ability exchange for that. And we do have the number here. It's 1.5 range, actually, but it leashes up to 6. So as long as you stay within 6, it'll chase you, but you can disconnect from it if you suddenly zone out of that area. So with that, if you're a mage player, if you're a Nazebo, your play is suddenly very loopy. you're going to cast a spell probably at max range because you're used to it, and then you'll kind of walk in and go, oh, collection, and loop on out, and then kill the next thing and loop on in and loop on out. And I just really like the idea that we are going to have solo lane drafting again, because right now it's just mages doing double soaks, at least in Diamond. And that's it's okay, but those poor Sonias of the world have just been losing their spot.
I had, again, anecdotal, I had an amazing Sony game last night, Giant Slammer against the Deathwing, and just owned horrendously. And I also had just a god-awful Sony game last night. So I had two Sony games. I'm not, as a Sony fan, I'm not here to announce the second coming, but I think things are looking pretty damn good for Sony right now.
So, with all that in mind, though, where are we heading? Are we attending lanes in different ways? Are we doing double tank? What do you think, Zane?
I don't think double tank ever went away, just because I feel like the quality of drafting fell off a cliff when people didn't have HGC to copy anymore. So I think double tank disappearing was more due to people not knowing how to react to the EXP changes. And the EXP changes I'm talking about are like the ones in 2018, like the October ones, when they made it so keeps and towers just don't give you anything anymore. So I feel like all of this change is basically, it forces you to play the way you were supposed to be playing the whole time. Just freeze the waves, AFK, and don't let the enemy team get EXP. Like, it just makes a bunch of interactions in every single wave where before there was absolutely nothing to do. It was literally rotate, get out as quick as possible because you don't want to waste time. Yeah, now it's actually freeze.
It forces us to have that kind of quieter, it forces us to have a laning phase. Where it's
pretty much
quieter and saner unless you want to die. If you want to
after the EXP changes, when they like initially came out, my team Scythe Esports was still scrimming like Hee and Freedom and Tempo Storm and all that. We were the first team to figure out if you give your forts and give all of your keeps and let the catapults push in, you can actually just AFK beside your core and they can't get the EXP from there. We killed offlaners, like HGC level offlaners, off cooldown because they couldn't figure out how to get the EXP. It was hilarious. And now everybody's going to be able to do that at every level of play. Like, what's it going to cost for a bronze like Twin Blades variant to push somebody off of a wave? Like, literally run at him and punch him in the face, and now there's a reward for it. He doesn't get the shiny globe.
I mean, that's the point. And you can see the enemy globes. They're darker, but they're there, kind of like Deckard potions. And if you are, I'm really excited for Blaze, because Blaze has some cool zoning tools. He's got the health to deal with it. I mean, even Nazebo just throwing up a zombie wall over the enemy wall and saying, no, you don't come out. I'm protecting these for all of 6 seconds. It's not a long time. And then they disappear. And they're gone.
It's so fantastic that EXP finally has a visual component. Like, if this had been in the game at the very base, the quality of gameplay right now would legitimately be 2 or 3 times higher. Like, the most important mechanic in the game didn't have a visual till just now. Let that sink in. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was our gold, and we didn't have a shiny pop-up of number when you completed it. But I am interested because around all the streams, I'm hearing lower leagues saying this is going to be awful for them. But isn't this for them? And then they'll learn, right? And they'll get better.
Well, this is one of those moments where I go, it's all relative. We're all dealing with the same change. Like, whether you are the type of player that adapts to this change quickly or not, if you're going to talk about it like the players in lower leagues who are kind of doomsaying about this change, if you're going to talk about that, you're basically talking about your league in a general hive mind mentality. You're saying, well, us players at this league can only adapt to change at a certain rate, and we're all kind of at this average of being able to adapt to change. Well, it's kind of irrelevant to a certain degree, because if it's a problem for you, it's a problem for everyone else in your league. No, it's not.
Well, before you even go that far, you could also just say, like, what were you guys doing before there was a big shiny visual? Were you getting EXP? No. Now you are? Yes. Okay, that's an improvement, because that matters. Believe it or not, EXP is the most important thing in the game, and when you weren't getting it before and you are now, you got buffed.
Yeah, it was my same mentality back when we had HGC. Like, I was so annoyed with staying on previous patches. I'm like, screw it. The new patch is out. Move the pros to it. And there's always a debate there where it's like, well, no, you shouldn't change the thing in the last minute. And I'm like, they all have to deal with it. They're pros. Screw it. Let's actually see them play games on the patch that we're playing on, because I'm watching HGC this weekend and I'm not learning anything because the meta has shifted at home. because they nerfed Tassadar or they nerfed Genji or whatever nerf was happening at the time. And we have the same conversations over on our Hearthstone show as well with card changes. Although I think I think the finals at BlizzCon this year for Hearthstone kind of bit me in the butt because I tend to say, change it. Who cares? And the last minute changes, I think, made the finals for Hearthstone this year kind of boring. But anyways, I digress. Again, obviously, it's a small sample size. We're a day and a half into it. But my gut reaction is that this is a pretty damn positive change. I really like it. And I think it's important for us all to remember that we're all having to deal with it. You know, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, whether it's going to take you a bit or take your cohorts a bit to wrap your brains around it. It's the same for all of us. It's an even playing field. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Not really sure what too much else to say in that regards, but I have really been enjoying it, and I want to double down on what you say, Kyle. I'm really excited that we can see the enemies XP orbs, because we hadn't had that confirmed, or if it was, I definitely missed it. And it adds a really fun little extra layer to that lane game that I'm enjoying.
There's an interaction on every single minion. Like before, your interactions were like the objective, run at the fort, do the mercenary. Now it's all of that and also every minion ever. That's a lot of additional combat that you're going to be having that wasn't existing before. Like the amount of times you're going to get free kills because somebody overextended to get EXP and you managed to outplay that. Like as a tank player, as a ranged DPS, as a melee, it doesn't matter. You are universally buffed because there's going to be more hero-hero interactions. If you have good mechanics or if you just have better mechanics, you're going to kill things and that's going to go well for you.
Yeah.
Honestly, my biggest critique is tech size. When the number flies into you, which it already does. I mean, it's just that the orb flies at you and your brain goes, oh, here it comes. And then the number appears, which it is currently in game anyway. It's like 84. And you're like, wow, 84, that's a pretty decent number. And then you go do a camp and it's like 225. And you're like, wait, hang on. I just did mental math and realized that 3 minions are equal to this camp, but the camp was celebrating way more.
I would like it to be.
They should have given you a big stacking number that like floats over your head, and like every time you pick it up, it stacks one and gets bigger. Like that should have been the thing. There should have been crit indicators on the EXP.
I think that's
or
something
just ding sounds like the quests.
Now that it's in the game, though, I think that's the kind of thing that would be. I'm assuming it's the kind of thing that would be relatively easy for them to adjust. Yeah, I would like it to be additive, like
spaghetti code. Who knows?
84, and then kind of roll up and get larger. Because if the goal, I mean, they've said as much. The goal of this is to teach, to make it obvious in game how this XP game is playing out. And I think that actually would be a really important tweak to this, is to make it abundantly clear what you're getting the most XP from, whether it's a lane or a mercenary camp or whatever. Because if nothing else, my God, I'm sick of fighting with people about the damn samurai mercenary on Hanamura.
Ooh.
Can we?
Yeah, that's a frustrating one.
My caps locks button is getting worn out.
Or just the other oblique things that you didn't actually know in the game, like Hanamura minions give you 50% more EXP, or 2 minions give you different EXP from every other map, or the fact that they just under the hood changed every single minion's EXP, like global. You get more EXP at level 1 now from a wave than you used to before. You get like 36 more now. And it changes all the breakpoints for where you level up and where objectives happen. Yeah. They just like really casually did that. They're like, by the way, we changed the entire EXP system and some other stuff. What?
I mean, they mentioned it here in the notes. Like, for example, like the wizard minion no longer gives XP.
It doesn't do a thing.
It now strictly just drops the health orb. But they did say that the experience globes that drop off of every other minion has been upped on average to compensate for the loss of the XP that comes out of the wizard. Which is fine. I mean, it's obvious you don't see one of those orbs drop out of the wizard. Like it is something you can see in game now, which is great. So if you're not reading the patch notes, as long as you're looking, you should. This should eventually become clear to you.
As long as you have some amount of like eyesight, you should be able to figure it out.
To a certain degree, Yes, I mean there is a lot of noise. I wonder if that's the reason they made the wizard not drop it. Because like, what do you do? Does it drop the orb inside the bigger orb, or does the
or it drops two right beside each other? Yeah, no, I agree with that. I actually really like that. I think it's really elegant. Also, the fact that archers and melees now give you the same amount of EXP, that's actually really vaguely relevant. Mostly because you can zone archers EXP way more easily than you can zone the melees because they're going to be positioned differently and at different times.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Very cool. But yeah, any closing thoughts on Experience Globes, or shall we move on to the big boy himself?
No, we're good to go. Big boy. What's his name? Who is he? I haven't heard of him before.
I think he's Hot Dragon Man. Von Underbite.
I'm pretty sure it's just a Brightwing skin, right?
It is just a Brightwing skin, right? Oh my god! Yeah. Don't get me started about how good the Brightwing skin is. It's amazing.
It's an actual remodel. It looks pretty sick.
Oh, so finally, it's not just a freaking hat. It's not just a hat. Let's talk about let's talk about Deathwing. I almost got Dragon Wing, and then Corny in the chat room typed Dragon Man the second I was trying to say Deathwing. So I was at BlizzCon and didn't get a chance to play Deathwing, as I mentioned on the BlizzCon episode, because he had a line every single time I went down to the Blizzard arcade. Every time I had a free moment to go check the arcade, I'm like, nope, too late, too long. Got to go do an interview or got to go catch this panel or whatever it is. So didn't have a chance. So this is my first time getting to play the damn Deathwing. I know it's yours, Kyle. Zanehyde, was this your first time playing Deathwing?
Yes, this was my first time being a large dragon.
Yeah. Kyle, I know you were really stoked about a proper, just big ass dragon. You, Mr. D&D player for most of your life. Is the hype real? Is it delivering on the fantasy you were hoping it would?
All right, so you did your interview from BlizzCon, and they're like, well, no, it wasn't really a D&D thing. We gave him the bellowing roar fear. You know, it's from World of Warcraft. But they made him go claw, claw, bite on his auto attack. No denying anymore that there's a D&D nerd. Of course there is, somewhere at Blizzard. And they made this just for me. I'm convinced now. He's adorable. He sits like a cat when he's idle. He does the dog dance with the little butt scratching. Like, he is so cute, so cool, so exactly what you want from a big old dragon. I've even heard that when you do incinerate, which is this ability, you'll kind of go, what the hell is this for? But when it kills minions, they like float in the air. They like are picked up as though by a tornado on Sky Temple, right? Like, there are some graphical coolnesses in this that are just delicious. And I applaud the entire Blizz team for just having at it. I'm so happy.
I wonder if this was more intensive than Ragnaros, because they said when they made Rag, he was like the most visually intensive thing they ever did, and they really pushed the envelope with his particle effects. I wonder if Deathwing was even higher caliber than that, because he certainly looks like he has a lot more like triangles and polygons and all that jazz. Like, he's huge.
I feel like the sense of him being a solid object is probably more traditional in that way, whereas like the fire tornado effect of Ragnaros still kind of boggles my mind a little bit. But the effects package that came in with Deathwing, like his fire, and more specifically to me, I'm more impressed by like the ground shattering like earth and rock effects. Because when you mix that with the fire and lava effects they've added, like it really, like I rated the shit out of Deathwing. It feels like Deathwing. Like they really hit that nail on the head.
I definitely know exactly what you're talking about. Down on low settings, I see all the exact same things you do.
Yeah. Sorry, I've still got a little bit of a cough, everybody. So you're happy, Kyle. What about like outside, Kyle? I'm just one more follow up from you. Outside of just flavor and living the dragon fantasy of your dreams, you think he's going to be meta? You think he has a place in the draft?
He's going to seduce a lot of people. I think that he's going to get caught out easily as people enjoy the fantasy. I think there is an extremely cute like Q build involving Wicked, Inferno, and Conflagration, where you put sort of a exploding dot on them that might feel real good as the enemy team groups up and somehow stands in your slow and therefore ends up in the entirety of your lightning breath.
Oh, dude, I just love it when the entire enemy team AFKs and my DPS abilities that actually take like 17 seconds for me to hit. Sorry.
Right. No,
out loud.
and you're right. Like, it's almost as though he's made to counter CC, but why do you need to counter it when apparently your team drafted all the CC and stun locks the entire team in your massive molten flame, not lightning breath, excuse me.
Yes, and there's enough CC to go around.
Sure. You can find other ways to do
like
it.
if you both have CC and one of you have Deathwing, there's something to be said there.
Yeah, oops.
Yeah, so Zane, you were doing some, for the audio only listeners, you were doing a whole lot of head shaking and just pantomiming the word no on the meta question. So you don't think Deathwing is coming to a stomp comp near you?
I think there's exactly one way you make him work, and his Burning Rage at level 4 is insanely high damage throughput. Like at level 7, if you stick on 3 heroes for 5 seconds, you do 7k damage. You're not auto-attacking, you're not doing anything. You literally pressed W once, and then you right-click towards them. But I don't understand how you right-click towards them when you're slow. They can right-click away, and your one gap close ability moves you like 2 inches. I really would like for him to work. I'm not that big of a pessimist that I want him to be awful, but I also can't figure out how to make him work. So if someone else can do that, I will wire you money in gratitude.
He's a really big, obvious, impossible to not hit target, which really just in a game like this, where we have popular heroes like Sylvanas and slightly less popular heroes like Tychus, where like if they can lock on, they can land their hits, they're just going to melt you. Deathwing seems to have an issue. And if you're playing PTR right now, it's kind of difficult for me, at least, to kind of wrap my head anecdotally around the success or failure of Deathwing because there's one on both teams. Every game I'm watching Deathwing win, and every game I'm watching Deathwing lose. So take that as it will.
But did it feel different? Like when a losing Kira is losing, she's paper, she's awful, her ult does nothing. When a losing Deathwing was losing, did it feel like he was holding the gate? Or
I'll give you that. I think it kind of did. Because you can switch forms, because you can give yourself just a kit of ranged abilities if you really want to and not be up in everybody's grill. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're right. I noticed at least the Deathwings that I thought were playing well, either in winning or losing games, were doing exactly that. Because I didn't play Deathwing personally myself against real people because I did not want to incur like a 20-minute queue. You're going to wait a long time if you want to play Deathwing. I went into AI, cranked up the difficulty, and just, try to get a feel for the kit. And I noticed that like I never really wanted to switch to the ranged abilities unless I really needed my own stun that my team wasn't bringing, or whatever the case. I kind of just wanted to be up in everybody's business the entire time to try and get the most out of my queue when eventually I whittled someone down enough that they wanted to run away, and I could, thanks to choke points or whatever, have a pretty good idea on where they're going to choose the path. But in the actual games and actual application playing with other Deathwing players, the ones that I liked playing with were smartly switching between the stances, and in losing games spent a lot more of their time with their ranged abilities, and it made it difficult to kind of break the line because there's just so much stun happening, so much fire on the ground happening. I mean, when you walk up, when you just stroll up to a wall that's still up so you can't see past it and thinking, oh yeah, my lane's pushed in, I can do this, and just a giant explosion of fire just comes pouring out the front, doing DPS like you've never seen. Yeah, it adds a little extra to the game for sure. But it's been so long. I'm not misremembering it to say that when Cho'Gall launched, we all just murdered him dead, and then he got a pretty sizable buff to his survivability.
I think he was most powerful in his launch state, wasn't he? He had the level 16 unstoppable and heal, didn't he?
There was a time. On launch, we all owned his butt except for the spinny fist thing that was unstoppable, right? Or was that later?
No, I think it came out with him because he was broken as hell if you got to 16. Like, once you got to 16, it was gravy train. You threw bombs, they reset immediately, they silenced things. It was great. You just had to get to 16 to win the game. And people weren't used to that back then because the game was faster back then in terms of when you won.
Yeah. I don't know. There's I want to see him in coordinated play because it's playing alongside a Deathwing. It seemed like things went the best when we were all on the same page, backing the Deathwing up and just making it so that the opposing team couldn't really just stand and lay into him. And vice versa. It seemed like things for me went the worst against Deathwings when the Deathwings team was in unison backing up the Deathwing. But all of the others, like just kind of skirmishing with a Deathwing in lane, did not feel threatening. It felt pretty easy to get around the abilities, and at least with the heroes I like to play and the heroes I really wanted to try, which are my solo laners, it's kind of eating his lunch. So it's interesting. I totally see the challenge though. Like this is a fantasy you really want to deliver on. This is a one of those kind of tentpole, like poster child heroes for Heroes of the Storm. This is a game where we have some very unique standout heroes like Abathur, like Cho'Gall, and now Deathwing that are just so, they're really reaching for it. Like they're really taking a risk, I think, in that he's always a dragon, and this isn't Ragnaros. Ragnaros is like small. Like Ragnaros is the friggin' size of Thrall, basically. Deathwing is huge on top of always being a dragon. And so I can see the challenge of wanting to deliver on that fantasy of, okay, well, what do we do if he's always big? Well, we make him unstoppable. Ooh, that's really powerful. How are we going to balance that out? Well, we don't know. Well, let's see. What's the balancing act? Well, we have an armor mechanic. We have a lot of hit points. We have that unstoppable. They have all these pieces that, like, I kind of think of it as clay or like a water balloon. As you push in one place, it kind of bulges out the other. You know, where are they taking away? Where are they adding on? I think they have a lot to work with Deathwing. I'm not sure out the gate he's going to rock our world with his performance.
No, I think he needs adjustments to just how long it takes to wind up on his abilities. Because, like, even though your wind up is 45 years of your life, you still don't hit that hard even when you hit, because they don't stand in the ability for the entire duration. Like the biggest one that stands out to me is the Q. Compare his Q to an Alarak pressing Q on you. The Alarak did the exact same amount of damage. He did it all up front and it was all instant. He also pulled you 30 miles away from your team and gets to do that every 6 seconds because Blizzard hates us all. But Deathwing doesn't get to do the exact same thing. He has to sit there, waits for the channel, fires it. They're going to be right-clicking the second you press Q. You're not ever hitting it on anything. Like, the worst part to me, playing in try mode and trying to make him work in a competitive mindset, was he just feels like an offlaner. Like, why wouldn't you just have him, you know, you have your variant in the 4-man, you're on Dragonshire, you taunt somebody, and you tell your Deathwing to drop out of the sky on top of him. And he presses 2 buttons, the thing dies, and he goes and walks back top. Like, I don't see what else you'd do with the character, but having him drop out of the sky and just kill things, that does seem fun. And it seems useful. Because a global hero that can do damage from anywhere on the map, that's crazy powerful. The last one who could do that was called Abathur, and he was permabanned for his entire life.
Well, and that's kind of the way he's looking, is a team fight joiner. Because
yes,
you do
not a starter.
Right. You are on long cooldown for your fly at 7 or at 20, where you get all 7 towns if you wish. You can land on top of people and reduce that cooldown. And that seems your way to, I'm going to soak, okay, join, and then I'm going to go soak again, but now 45-second cooldown or so. And in that way, like, they've pre-thought of a lot of things. There is no hearth healing. You cannot heal back the thing. You have to go in the air and deal with this very slow business. If you have abilities that are healing you on the ground or giving you shielding, that would give you health. They've made sure you can't fly and sort of trick that mechanic. You will be gone for a very, very long time if you stink a Deathwing, but you're not dying. You know, you don't die per se, but you also will not participate in the entire game.
I wonder how many times on Dragonshire people are going to just invade the enemy siege camp and then have Deathwing drop out of the sky and have his hitbox be so big that they can't cap the cap. That sounds really entertaining to me.
Body block him out. Yeah. No,
yeah, like, I mean, what do you do? He's so large.
The best experiences I've had on PTR with a Deathwing was on Dragonshire.
Haha!
It's Dragonshire.
It's because there's dragon in the name. I knew it.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I mean, it's like you just spent 5 minutes talking about the global potential and having.
Pretty much.
You got to fight over those points. And that's where he's very much zone control. Like whether, I think regardless of the stance that he's in, it's it's all about the zone control. Like, yes, he has a lot of damage potential, but it's really kind of you're putting a lot of it on your opponent to make the mistake, to stand in your abilities long enough for the damage to add up. It's not instantaneous, like you said, with your Alarak analogy there. But I think anywhere where you have a long point-based fight, like a long-term one, not these ones that are a little more blowout, you're probably going to find some more value in your Deathwing. And I think Dragon Gyre also really shines because of the choke points around the north and south points. You need to
generate really esoteric value with him. Like, it's not going to be based off hitting the enemy heroes. It's going to be based off hitting things that aren't heroes that happen to have heroes in the way. Like, think Infernal Shrines. Like, Shrines is literally one around who clears the wave, has control over the bot entrance onto the shrine, and then manages to lock that down for the remainder of the shrine. That's how you win a shrine on Infernal. It's always from the bottom, from the wave up, right? Like, what do you do if a Deathwing goes, nukes the thing, and then stands in the bush? You're not walking past him per se. I mean, you're going to lose a shit ton of your HP to do that. So, like, the most value you get in him is, like, creating fake choke points, just putting him in between you and the enemy team, and then saying, all right, walk through him.
That was an interesting comment. So, because of the lane minions being able to back me up, I always want to go through the bottom rather than the side.
If you clear the wave, you can go through the side or the bottom. The enemy team can only go through the side. So you have two directions to attack from. They have one. You have two directions to retreat to. They have one.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I mean, I'm most excited about him on Infernal Shrines because you'll just sit on the big old thing doing incinerates and whatnot, and it'll feel pretty awesome. I am curious about one thing. The level 10 upgrade, Burn Beneath My Shadow, allows you to get a reset on your Cataclysm, your big flamey wave, if a fort or keep is destroyed. Combine this maybe with something like Skyfall at 7, where you can shoot little meteors while you're in space. Is this Towers of Doom? Like, you fly around, you interrupt all the objectives because you have sight on them at all times. You prep the towers right before the objective, and Deathwing casts, maybe 4 Cataclysms in a row.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are you serving up Deathwing as like the new Medivh without shields? Like, it's just this obnoxious objective of interrupter?
I mean, you got 3 charges of that thing. That's a pretty long interrupt. And if you are prepping forts, as we do already on Towers of Doom, you might be able to do something really cute here.
I mean, I think we're all kind of heading towards the same place, whether we're more positive or negative on the idea of Deathwing, is that I don't think this is a one-trick hero. I think this is very, very map dependent, definitely in the form that he currently is.
He seems like a team hero, the same way Abathur or Tassadar are, where 5 people have to play around, 5 people have to play around one system in order to get the max value out of it. Like, when your team has, let's say Zeratul, you should be AFKing until 16-20. You should be maximizing soak, give everything if you have to, get Zeratul to his power spike, like enable that one character that is so different from everything else that you have to make sure that it gets to its power spike and everything else can go to hell. As long as we get him to his place, nothing else matters, right? Like getting Medivh to his stacks, getting Tracer to her late game spikes, getting Sergeant Hammer to her 13, where she gets her move speed and she can actually be a threat. That's huge. And Deathwing, for, like you said, competitive earlier. How would he play in a competitive setting? Like, that to me is the most interesting place for him, because he's a strange macro hero that also has a global, that also has really high map uptime if you play him correctly, and just gets to clear waves. And honestly, offlaners love clearing waves. They have Stockholm Syndrome at this point. They clear waves. That's all they do. That's all he seems to do. So, like high potential value, a lot of work to be done to get it. Pretty much. Yeah, that's fair. I don't even know that it's high potential value. I have no idea what the potential value is. Hence, if you can figure it out and write it down in a nice, easy to read way, I would appreciate you to slide into my DMs. All right. Well, we're going to find out real soon because it's on the PTR. So we're assuming Deathwing next week. Looking that way. Yep. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Fire in the air. Yeah, it would be and honestly, like, yeah, he does seem a little easy to kill, and maybe we'll see a tweak to his survivability upon launch. It wouldn't be the first time.
I mean, they're being smart. His Onslaught is combined with Incinerate, and putting talents into Incinerate W feels good because that thing Like old Diablo kind of needs the help. I didn't know what to do with Flame Stomp in old Diablo other than maybe, look around a corner. Incinerate, when you buff it up, feels great, but it's alongside Onslaught, which is good. So that Onslaught's not also sitting alongside Earth Shatter or Lava Burst. It's divided, in any of that power pie that you change around, I think gives him room to grow. And old Zeratul had no room to grow. He was just overpowered. And when they changed up his talents, they gave various gauges they can move. There are so many gauges they can move on Deathwing. Wind-ups, damage, slow amounts.
And the question is if they're going to step forward and move any of them, or if they're going to stare at him for a year and then decide to actually do something. The prayer is they do it quick.
Yeah, and he does have to walk in the lane and get the XP, whereas, I know a lot of Murkies that are really stoked because they're real good at grabbing XP orbs in a bubble and running away real quick. So if you want to be special, it sounds like Murky might be your place to hang out for this next little patch.
Absolutely. There are so many players in like Masters, Grandmasters, NA specifically, who just take Murky and go proxy waves like all game long. They do nothing else. They go to Cursed Hollow, they walk behind the enemy forts, and they just get the waves there, and then they rotate to mid and do the exact same thing. It's actually hilarious because nobody knows how to play around it, and it's actually hard to play around. Like, you can't do anything about your waves getting proxied by Murky. Go kill him. Good luck. You got absolutely nothing for it. You're like 3 EXP points.
Yeah, you're out of range of all the XP there. He's getting stacks of bribe because you're not ready for it in the first jump, and lo and behold, now all your camps are gone and you're overwhelmed by the early game.
Flavorous in the chat room wants to know, is Greymane a Deathwing counter with Cursed Bullet?
What isn't a Deathwing counter? If it can do DPS, it's a Deathwing counter. Honestly, like every single DPS in the game that has mobility should be your bigger priority than how much it actually throughputs. Because Deathwing doesn't have the ability to escape. If you jump on him, he dies. If you're a Tychus, you have dash level 1, dash into his face, he dies. If you're a Greymane, you have move speed 13, dash into his face, he dies. If you're a Tracer, literally body block him to death. Good luck hitting a Tracer. There's like nothing you can do to anything that can move.
Definitely my experience. Like I said, like when he was backed up by the team, it was problematic. When the Deathwing was not, it was kind of funny. It was just open season.
Yeah. I think if I were to change one thing, it would just be, I would like to see Onslaught have a bigger range.
Yeah. Again, too,
or a quest component to make it get bigger range or something like that, or abilities to upgrade your mobility somehow. That'd be a spice.
But also, it's, again, one day into PTR, and it's a lot of Deathwing players.
We're already asking for changes.
Playing like you, it's people playing Deathwing like you shouldn't play him. It's people like thinking, I'm a big dragon, I've got all this armor and hit points. I'm going to solo run out into this lane after a team fight where there's 4 of them and 3 of us, and my 2 buddies are nowhere to be found because I think I'm a badass, and then the other 4 descend upon you and you die. Dead. Exactly. And like, that's just... We shouldn't be reading into that because it's just not how you should play the hero. The hero actually should be played more like a solo laner that is mortal. So,
what's that? Blizzard released another solo laner. Wake me up.
It's probably
been on pause looking for a tank since Garrosh. That was the last time they released a tank. It was a good day.
I'm definitely biased in this regard. Kyle, I did your weird roach build you were really excited about after the Zagara changes on PTR.
How'd it go?
Really freaking well.
Awesome. I mean, it's Giant Killer, so you were fighting Deathwings.
It wasn't even that. It was just like the only time I got to be like a more old school lane bully, and it didn't matter because I had just so much chaos in my lane. People couldn't really punish me for trying to get like towers. Again, not that they're worth as much as they used to be, but also... come mid game when I was spawning 3 roaches at a time, it was like camps were laughable. They were going down real fast.
Did that impact your league, Zane, with the Nazebo and the Zagara business?
I saw a lot of Zag being experimented with, and it just reminded me of 2015. Like, I had these massive flashbacks to Dreadnought talking about Sky Temple Zagara in the mid bot rotation. Zagara's fantastic. Like, she does so much cool stuff. She gets full vision of enemy rotations. You know when they're starting siege. You get to do your own camps fast. She takes all the EXP, and she's super fast to rotate because they can't clear the creep on your side without dying. Like, she does so many little cool interactions. And the fact that she maybe scales at 16, like maybe actually becomes a hero at 16, that's kind of fantastic to me. And Devouring Maw has always been completely broken. It's like crazy powerful ult. The only reason nobody remembers that is because Zagara. She's been laughable for a hot minute.
I was gonna take Maw because last week in live, I just ended up in these weird quick match games multiple times with Zagaras that just pulled up these god tier Maws. I'm like, God, I forget this. You want to talk about it feeling like it's 2015? I had the same thing. And so I'm on PTR and I'm like, I'm gonna go Maw. And I'm like, oh, but XP Orb. So I ended up going Nidus. And boy, it led to this really fun mid game where I was just popping up the lane, getting the XP. I had nothing to do with the lane, and then immediately returning to the fight. So I ended up going the auto attack build, the auto attack quest, because I was just always fighting. It was a really fun game. I had a great time. This is, again, just story time with Garrett. I have no idea if this is going to be like the new way I play this game or anything, but one of the more fun games of heroes I've had in a very long time.
Oh, that is interesting, though, because Nidus is now more fun. Whether or not it's more powerful, which it sounds like, if your minions and your enemy minions are hitting the wall, they are leaving something behind. Rather than you being too late to grab it, you are running up there and vacuuming up all the XP that was left over.
It's proactive instead of reactive across the board. And people like being proactive. They like being the ones to get ahead. Nobody likes sitting behind a tower AFKing and praying for the XP to come to you. That's like virgin as hell. You want to be the big Chad walking up and bashing things.
It's exactly the experience I had. So I had a great time. I think there's more Zagara in my future. I missed her. I had a really fun time last night. So yeah, it's like I'm texting my old ex at like 3 a.m, like, hey, missed you. What you doing? Oh, you know.
And then she tells you she cleaned up and got a college degree and stopped doing the coke, and you just feel so happy. You never expected to hear it, but they actually said it out loud, and you're like, is she lying to my face? Is she making it up? Let's find out. This is a mistake I've made before.
That's great. Well, anyways, let's move away from the PTR because we're gonna do more of a deep dive next week. We'll take a look at talents. We'll take a look at kind of how Deathwing is faring. Let's talk to you, Zanehyde. Man, we haven't had you on the show before. And you've done so many guides, tier lists. You're all over the Reddit. Kyle, I know you wanted to bring up kind of Zanehyde's philosophies. There was a post you put out, it's a little older now, from like 2 months ago, which was your Ganis guide. And I remember, Kyle, you covering this on the show. You pitched it up, and that was we highlighted it for our strategy segment.
Oh, it was beautiful. Back before people learned to draft against him. Which is so sad. Oh, I had such fun with your guide. I was owning for weeks. Nice. And now it's all just Uthers and Lucios and ETCs ruining everything I do. Like clockwork. They learned how, and it's awful. Well, good for them. Good for them.
Well, if you're rotating, like at the point where they've all figured out how to Mal'Ganis, just look for the next tank that everyone's forgotten about and switch over to that for a while. Like Diablo's the hot to me right now.
Dude,
and so
yeah, that's what I'm playing as Diablo. Everyone forgot. Like, just because I'm so sick of Johanna. I can't play any more Johanna. It's not against the game. I love you, Johanna. You're amazing. I'm so happy she's early banned just so I don't feel like I have to play her.
My chat's been flaming me. Like, I was just picking Johanna every game, and my chat said, if you pick Johanna one more time, we're all leaving. And I was like, okay, we're not touching that hero ever again. We're just going to go Varian and kill her off cooldown.
No, the same. My YouTube, everyone was like, Kyle, look, I'm not a big fan of Unranked, but can you please just go to Unranked and pick something else? I'm like, no, I got a Johanna over and over again. So when you brought in your Mal'Ganis guide, I was so pleased. And it brought with it an interesting philosophy, particularly about block talents, his wing guard, and the controllability of Might of Sargeras and his armor. What do you feel is the power in general about block talents? Are they good universally? Should we be taking them more often?
There's two situations you think about when we're talking about block talents. One is, what value does this give me in the laning phase? And what value does this give me in the team fight? And where do I get the most value? So, like, you talk about Artanis's block, right? He uses that for the 1v1 on, like, Dragonshire and Braxis, and you win because it's crazy uptime. But it sucks in the team fight, and that's fine because all you need to do is win the 1v1. And then you have blocks like Mal'Ganis's that are specifically for the team v team because you want to walk in the middle of their team, press W, hit as many people as possible, and get, like, 4 or 5 stacks. And then you feel fantastic, and then Tracer rips them all off, and you feel miserable. Or you have ETC, who has the best block in the entire game. He literally has a button that says your squishies are now tankier. It doesn't matter how stupid they are now tankier. And that's like the best button in the whole game. So like block talents in general are just always high value. It's just what are you trading versus that talent? Usually they're high value. Sometimes they're garbage. Thralls is trash. I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head, but I know bad ones exist. But they're few and far between for the most part. Greymanes is worse than just going invisible.
Thrall has that weird one tied to his Ghost Wolf. Yeah, when it hits a hero.
You have to give up too much for it.
What about the old, like the moldy oldie ones, like what Arthas has, where it's not in your control, you don't press a button at all, it's just periodic?
I feel like Arthas's rhyme is more for solo laning, and I don't see why you'd ever pick Arthas as a solo laner. He's like a tank pretty much exclusively. Sonya's is an example of you'd occasionally take that just to win your 1v1. Like, that makes sense to me. The downside is you are then giving up the WWE build, which sucks because it's called WWE. That's how you know it's good.
If you knew it was good, it would be WWF.
Oh, no.
Wait, but that was the Federation, the Wildlife. They didn't want that anymore.
Well, yes, but that's also when wrestling was the best.
Oh, I see.
Opinion alert.
Yeah, apparently. There's also a philosophy we haven't talked about around here that I really like, and you often are looking for ways to enhance your allies' talents and checking their screen, what you have to do with them. Mm-hmm. How would you describe that to players who have never really thought about it?
Oh, the best one is Leon Black has a clip where he pressed tab, saw the enemy Medivh was at 39 stacks, said he's going to drop to get a stack. Then he walked out, baited him, threw him into the fort, insta-killed him, set him back to 0 stacks. That is the best argument for paying attention to other people's quests. It doesn't matter if it's your allies or your enemies per se, but if it is your allies, you want to power them up as quick as possible. Like if you have the Asmodan, like set up the wave, it's not hard to do. If you have the Nazebo, don't kill the wave, let him. Right? It's like, it doesn't take much effort on your part to adjust your playstyle, and if they power up quicker, you win the game. It's the same thing as like the Zeratul argument. He wins the game at 20. It doesn't matter what the enemy comp is. He wins the game at 20. If you get to 20, you get to win the game. People like winning the game, so do that.
So regardless of who it is, whether it's a questing Zul'jin or a target practice Hanzo, we should all get a little crazy and a little weird until their quest is complete.
Pretty much. They're just going to be better. And what does it cost you, really? It's like a few seconds of your time. They were probably going to muck about doing their quest anyway. Like, don't go crazy with it. Don't help the Zul'jin if he's AFK in lane and missing all the EXP. Like, let him do his own thing there. But if you can enable them and it doesn't cost you much, go for it.
Now, our supporters gotten a little bit of a philosophical discussion about Tomb of the Spider Queen. Because we have heard in the past that the top is the most important lane because it gives you access to the boss. If you take out their fort, you now have later access to the boss with them having to push out the lane. But someone in your stream heard that you said the middle was the most important.
Middle is universally the most important lane on Tomb of the Spider Queen because it controls top and bot by itself. If you want to get on turn in, and shout out to Barcode/Milk and Cookies, the Octalysis coach, because he sat down with us once and just did a session with Old Scythe Esports and taught us how to play Tomb. But basically, if you push out the mid wave, you get control of both the turn-ins because you get to see them. They don't get to see you. They don't know if you went up or down. And then they find one of you and you push them away and you get the turn-in. And it's super easy. So the most important lane is actually just middle. Like everything else doesn't matter as much as middle.
That's interesting. And thinking about your philosophy there on Infernal Shrines, it makes sense. You're giving yourself access to the turn-in. You go either one, and now they're left out in the dark. Is there any... I mean, the middle has always been, from what we've heard, trickle-down information from pros, we should leave the middle open all the time because it's the easiest to clear. And if they take a fort in the middle, they actually just kind of made the game easier for us to get soak.
Yes and no. Like the proper way to play the game is freeze every single lane, right?
We have fun around here, and
exactly.
We want to kill things.
Nobody does that. Literally, no MMR band has 3-lane freeze, and that's the only way you're supposed to play the game if you want to play it optimally. So, like, the next best thing is we're pretending like it's pre-EXP changes, and we're just pushing everything regardless, because we can see where they are if we just push regardless, and we know they're not going to freeze, so they're not going to punish us. So just knock buildings over. Go forth, my child, and slay.
Do you think that'll change with the XP changes?
No. At Masters and Grandmasters, people will freeze waves. They were already doing it. And it wasn't across your entire team. It was not 5 people freezing waves. It was 1 or 2 really good players doing it occasionally when they could. It was never 5 people. If we had an HGC right now, and I like to joke around that the reason they killed HGC was because you would have to watch freeze fests for 20 minutes and it would be hella boring, is because if it was competitive, everybody would just AFK on their mount and try not to touch the wave the best they could. Actually, if you want to hear the most cancerous version of that, it's called Triple Stealth. You pick Nova, Zeratul, and Sumuro, and you have them all AFK in lane. That was an actual composition that professional teams ran. Can you imagine how incredibly fun it is to watch that? None of them move. None of them do anything. Literally, you watch nothing happen for 20 minutes.
In Hearthstone, we had a controversy because a professional player horrendously misplayed because he was simultaneously playing in an auto chess tournament while he was playing in his Hearthstone tournament. And in Heroes of the Storm, it sounds like simultaneously playing auto chess would be a requirement if you were playing that composition.
Pretty much. You literally can just take your hands off the keyboard, off the mouse, go get a mimosa, just relax for a bit. Don't pay attention to your screen. If you want to go for a walk, feel free.
Your tiny mimosa buzz wears off. It's time to actually play Heroes of the Storm.
Pretty much.
Oh, my goodness. I'm glad that never caught on. Well,
there's upsides and downsides.
Right. Well, that's the interesting thing, and you know why macro players are probably so angry at our games, because they're doing this hard, boring but hard to control yourself work of sitting back and soaking to 20 as Zeratul while we're all having the fun of team fighting when we shouldn't be. How would you fix it? Like XP isn't going to take us there, but it gives us some elements forcibly, but some elements. Where do we go?
Backwards, actually. Turn the train around. Actually pick it up, turn it around, and go back to 2015. So there's a gentleman named Ghost Dunk over in the Into the Nexus Schoolhouse Discord. That is Cavalier Guest / my old coach's Discord. And he did an analysis of literally hundreds of thousands of games, and he compared where they ended and how unbalanced the games were. He found the worst game quality in the history of this game was following the removal of ammo towers. That was the worst the game state has ever been. And then it got improved very slightly by the recent EXP changes. But the best game quality we ever had was pre-ammo removal. That was the best game quality we've ever had, was having ammo towers. So if you want to fix it, go backwards. But Blizz doesn't like doing that. They like going in circles and, you know, reinventing the wheel 30 times a day. So
did you see our interview with Kyle and Daybringer?
I did not see the Daybringer one. What happened?
They specifically said that one of the anomalies, that they tested was bringing ammo back.
Yes, I actually did read a Reddit post that said they tried with ammunition. What did Daybringer say about it? Did he like it, dislike it?
Originally their initial thought was that they had cracked it. They're like, yes, it makes so much sense. And then it kind of fell on its face once everyone in the office was actually playing on the build.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get into very deep technical specifics about why it was a failure. But that was kind of more or less the gist of it.
I don't mean to be terribly rude when I say that could very easily be a false positive, because I feel like, it's a little bit rude to say this, but I feel like they miss the mark more often than not because they don't have a big enough test size in the office. And the way you get around that is by having people who either have a huge amount of experience in game dev or have foresight, or both. And the only example off the top of my head, right? Like, I don't know what Riot's doing, but Dota 2 has Ice Frog, right? There's this one magical, mythical, completely insane guy who's pretty much virtually in charge of the entirety of the balance of that game. Just one dude. And he has the entire vision of the game. And he's pretty much kept it in a good state the entire time he's had it for the last decade or so, right?
Yeah. It's the exception though, right? Not that is not the norm for most games.
I suppose, but it's kind of what we needed.
I bring it up because I find it fascinating that it at least was like on the table. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I guess you could look at it either way, but I kind of look at it like, oh, well, damn, they mentioned it. Like maybe they will look at it again. Because I also kind of got the vibe, because I think I'm already forgetting our own damn interview, but I thought they mentioned they were thinking about making that live the same time as the XP Orb change. And they were like, nah, right. It's too much.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Just do one at a time, because you'll get false positives from your player base saying like, oh, it's terrible. They'll knee jerk to it without actually giving it a chance. Do one thing at a time for sure. One of the other changes I remember they mentioned was turning the mage minion into a sapper, which is something that's been thrown around in the idea of making the offlane relevant again.
Yep. We talked about that
I would
too.
take it. Yeah, okay. I would take it a step further, and I'd make the mage minion just cast a fireball every 3 seconds and nuke the crap out of buildings. Just absolutely knock them over to make offlane relevant again. But there are a lot of different ways you could do it.
Oh man, yeah. We're stuck in a learn by feels bad circle there, right? Because I wouldn't want to look down and see that mage destroying my business, and I certainly didn't like the out of ammo system on my beautiful towers because they ran out of ammo. But in the end of the day, I don't know what to do with merc camps right now. I feel like we'd circle around and get XP, not sweet, beautiful mercs that push during objectives. And
yeah, I don't like that either. It feels really bad. Like mercenaries are at their most effective when nobody's nearby them and they get forgotten about, which is really depressing. You want to push with the things, or you want to, as an offlaner, you want to feel like they're valuable. I feel like the only map that actually does that is Bruisers on Dragonshire top lane. I feel like that's the only situation where I actually feel like my offlane's empowered.
Now it's like this, well, like you were saying, instead of being proactive, it's being reactive. It's like, they don't notice them, and you're like rushing as fast as you can to get there and try and add a little bit more to the equation. Yeah. Well, I guess just play it global.
So, yeah, but so how do we, like, that's another scenario that I'd really love to, change with these anomalies coming up. When we had ammo, the mercenaries, even though they fed into the towers, got rid of the ammo, and therefore the wave pushed hard. So they resulted in a timed take in doing what they wanted, what you wanted them to do without actually being cool about it, because they just ran out of ammo and died, but they accomplished their goal. So if we're just using mercs as soak, what do we just buff the heck out of them so they're cool to hang out with?
You're never going to be able to fix the fact that mercenaries get nuked if 4 heroes look at them. Like, you shouldn't buff for that situation. You want to buff them for the situation where if left by themselves, they achieve value. I don't know how you fix that without completely redoing all of mercs. Because right now, like, I definitely feel like you take them for the EXP and you know the opponent's taking them at the same time. Try to take yours second so that they clash by your towers, not by the opponent's towers. Theirs get cleared by your towers shooting them, and then your camp walks and knocks things over. Like, it's literally that on every map. It's that on Altrak on mid. It's that on Tomb of the Spider Queen Bruisers. It's the same on Dragonshire Bruisers. You want to always cap your camp second so that it clashes in front of your towers, not in front of theirs.
No, that makes perfect sense. So maybe we take that idea with the sapper or the fireball and we put it on the mercs. What if they got crazy when they got in range of buildings?
Absolutely.
Stop throwing rocks. Go club it.
Or like the siege camp is like a really good example, because siege camps destroy buildings. They destroy everything, actually. Like Cursed Hollow, if you don't have somebody clear the siege camp, by the time you're done with the first trib, you lost your fort. It just fell over. If you time it correctly and you get it in such a way that you get a double stack of minion waves. So basically what you do is you cap the siege camp. The 2 waves go clash each other. You zone the enemy off clearing your wave. And then another wave arrives and it all pushes together when you clear 2 waves at the same time. Fort is dead. Fort is gone. It's evaporated. And that's the macro stuff you talked about earlier when you're like, well, somebody's trying to play 4D chess and we're just kind of team fighting over here, right? Like, that's the difference in type of player is how do you get that knowledge? How do you get that to the player base? How do you tell the player base that it's better to cap your mercenaries second? How is that ever made obvious or apparent to somebody else, right? Like the fireball would be obvious. Oh, if the mage gets up to the tower, he nukes the crap out of it. Okay, kill the mage, right? Or the EXP change is fantastic because you can now see EXP. The most important part of the game is now visible, finally. Hallelujah. Right? But how do you do that for like more esoteric things? Like, again, the mercenaries. How do you convey that they're useful besides, hey, this gives you a lot of EXP?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, is there a way to gamify that? Is there a way to display that in the actual interface of the game? And I don't think there necessarily is.
Not only that, is there a way to do it while staying in line with the design philosophy of your company and what this game is supposed to represent? So the sheer number of limitations you're under as a dev when you're trying to do this is mind-boggling. So finding elegant changes requires you to either be incredibly creative or have really good foresight. One of the two. And like, I'm sad to say, and I don't mean to be harsh, but the Blizz team is missing that in a large capacity because there are a lot of issues in the game that haven't been fixed directly, that haven't been paid attention to, right? There's a lot of things in the game that are cool as hell that no one does because nobody knows to do them. Right? Yeah. Like nobody creates merc pushes. Nobody like does good split pushing anymore. Nobody does good macro.
But I do like the armor, like on the bruisers on.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I want to stand in it. It feels good. And I really gave myself into Zeratul about 2 weeks ago. I was going to learn him. I wanted to see what it was all about. I'm on Diamond 1. I'm on the cusp of Masters. Let's see if Zeratul is what it takes. And the idea of building a double wing of archers and then one meatball from Ragnaros comes by and clears out my hard work bummed the heck out of me, and I left. So how do we
what you felt right there was a skill gap, because you were on the cusp of doing it perfectly, and then you got countered because you didn't keep in mind the Ragnaros' rotation. So it's not that you were doing too little, it's that the bar is even higher than where you were. And like, how do you convey that to regular people? Because remember, the baseline that we're talking about when you have no knowledge is clear the wave. That's it. That's all there is. Clear the wave, cap the camp. Doesn't matter when you cap it. Don't think about it.
To a certain degree, it can be extremely... It's just challenging, I think, for these types of games, because you like the joke on this the unofficial title of this podcast is "It Depends," because anytime we get a question, we're just like, well, I don't know. Let's Charlie Day this with red yarn and talk about all of the million different scenarios where that question has a different answer. And that's what you just said. That Kyle's experience changes completely if Ragnaros isn't there, or if Ragnaros is playing incorrectly, or if Kyle is omnisciently 100% on top of where the hell that Ragnaros is at all times.
Absolutely. But there's going to be one advantage with the EXP going forward is Rag didn't get any of the EXP he was supposed to pick up if you AFK'd in the bush. If you just clear the enemy ranged minions, let the melee stay there, take a beating, right? You just freeze the wave, take away their ranged. Rag is missing a lot of EXP, and you're going to be able to see that now. And a lot of people are going to be able to see that now, and maybe they'll start putting 2 and 2 together and realize, hey, if you deny the enemy EXP, it's more valuable than getting EXP yourself. Yeah. It's actually the same thing.
I'm kind of looking at the positive side of a lot of what you're talking about, Zane, and the difficulty in teaching a lot of these things. At least a lot of the philosophies that we have talked about on this episode are tricks, are strategies that single players can deploy. That one player on your team knowing that's good enough. The whole team does not need to be on board. Now, granted, if they're another one is it depends, but if they're unaware and they think that you're playing incorrectly, you may cause a rage scenario, whatever the case is. But it's kind of irrelevant. That's social gaming.
Yeah. There's a big part of actually, I started writing a series called Storm Lake 101, and then I stopped writing it because full-time job plus full-time streaming is too much to handle at the same time. But a big part of that was one-man macro. What can you do by yourself as an individual here? And I'm telling people, go play Jaina, play Greymane. Are you a support player? Get on Rhaegar, get on Stukov, get on Kerosene, things that can take siege camp, things that can take bruisers, things that can nuke waves, things that can depush, right? Like put yourself on heroes that clear the damned wave. And it's not hard to do. If you're a tank player, you don't have to just play Johanna. Stitches, Blaze, Zool exist. They're all tanks. Yes, Zool is a tank. Don't be confused by his category. He's a tank.
Do you think
there's so many options?
Do you think more Zools are going to die pushing out that wave, getting the XP post the
globe change? Absolutely. The number of deaths is about to shoot into the stratosphere. But that's growing pains.
Learning, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
We gotta learn.
Yeah, how else are you going to learn? Get out there and die. It's the best way to get better.
I'm just going to start playing Sonya again and Whirlwind and be fine.
But you were already doing it how it got designed to be. That, and you're a Rexar player too, so we're not even going to talk about that.
No, I don't, man, dude. I don't freeze lanes unless I have to. I love pushing because people don't always play right, and I can just go get towers sometimes. It's wonderful.
Right.
No, I'm part of the problem, but
who isn't part of the problem?
I see my opening,
the game encourages you to be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's I'm being cheeky. I'm just what am I gonna do? I'm gonna continue playing Rexar. I see no reason to change. I got Misha to go soak my orbs for me. I'll be fine. But yeah. So like I mean, if you had to just point one out, if you were like, hey listeners, like here's my tip for the day, like what is the one man macro you would recommend people learn? Is it stacking 2 waves and getting siege giants to go just push for the win?
Pick better heroes.
Pick better heroes. Okay.
Your one-man macro is what your hero is capable of doing. If you're not going to put yourself on heroes that can do that, and then you're going to go to the forums and complain that you don't feel impactful, well, there's your problem, right? Like, I'm not saying that your favorite hero in the whole wide world is bad, but I'm saying if you want to learn how to macro and you're going to one-trick Lily, you are going nowhere fast. The tools that you arm yourself with are the most important thing. Like, get over the hump of, I only like these heroes. Try different things. Like, I know a Genji one trick who I just coached the other day, and the entire session, I literally repeated these words: change your hero. I told him, get on Greymane or Maiev or Li Ming. If you like resets so much, all 4 of those heroes have resets, but get off Genji because you can't win the game with him. You cannot solo carry on that hero. Kills do nothing. Clearing waves do everything.
Clearing waves with kill potential. Fantastic.
Cosmic brain. There's actually a name for that specific style. It's called Zeratul.
Rusty. Rusty is putting it lightly on my Zeratul.
It's a big hurdle, man. You can't just jump on Zeratul.
Yeah.
The specific hero who we've never seen in another franchise. He's a cool guy.
Well, shall we move to emails and take some questions directly from our listeners?
Absolutely.
Rad.
Darkness stopped calling.
Darkness just texted me.
It's not the mober, it's a hero brawler!
You can send your emails to itncast@gmail.com. If you're a patron, congrats, you're in the patron Discord. You can shoot us messages directly there. Bob Goat wants to know, Zanehyde, what's your favorite tank?
Ooh, am I allowed to say Reinhardt? Reinhardt is my favorite tank. He was my Twitter background. When Scythe originally got like promotional materials, I was like, can you put Reinhardt? Because when he comes out, I'm about to rep that stuff. I don't care how bad he is. I'll one-trick him for 30 days. Favorite tank, Varian at level 4, very fun. Diablo at 16, very fun. It's really fun when you go and shout at things. I like characters that scream a lot. Favorite tank overall right now? Not really sure. It's a hard question to answer. We're just going to say Varian because he kills things.
Are you particularly passionate about Johanna, or are you just
I used
like
to
the
hate
Swiss
her.
Army knife?
I used to hate her, and then I played about 600 games of her in scrims in a row, not independently, in a row. So the Stockholm Syndrome set in, and I started loving her more and more and more. Pretty much, yeah. So I love Johanna with all my heart. I'm not joking in the slightest. I genuinely enjoy clearing waves and being brain dead on her. Everybody who watches me absolutely hates it, though, so I don't touch her anymore. But that was definitely my favorite tank for the majority. Tyrael was up there as well. When Tyrael got reworked, oh my goodness. So much fun. I felt like NA had finally reached Korea in some degree when we were just seeing Tyrael first pick, first mana every single game. That was a great time to be alive.
I kind of miss it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't miss Tassadar meta.
No, nobody does. Tassadar players don't miss Tassadar meta. If they do, they're sociopathic.
I have a couple who will probably want your email after the show. Pike Boo writes in and says, what are your general priorities in decision-making macro-wise and during a team fight?
Ooh, I was taught how to answer this question during this show, actually. It depends. Nice. For macro, most important thing, clear the wave or get the EXP. Doesn't matter. If you're trying to figure out how to get better at macro, go into a replay of your game, go to the end of the game, and figure out where your team ended. Like, did they end middle? Did they end bot? Did they end top? And then go back through the game and figure out how that fort and that keep got knocked over. That specific lane. Just look at that one. And then think to yourself, if I had known we were going to end there at the beginning of the game, could I have just put all of my effort into this one particular lane and ignored everything else and won the game like that?
Ooh. Hot damn, I love that. Holy crap, that is cool.
That is the easiest way to figure out how to get better at macro, is where should your prioritization be? Because everybody will give you like 700 little tips about maps. They don't apply to you. What applies to you is your replays because you made those. Go watch your own replays and figure it out.
That gives me chills. I'm not joking around, man. That is fresh. That is cool. Yeah.
Happy to hear it. That's what we're here for, right?
I mean, that's the we haven't answered these questions in a long time, but people always used to be like, hey, how do I find out why I should be playing a build from a website or a stats website or whatever? And I was always happy to hear that because we always would suggest like, hey, don't just blindly follow a talent build. Spend some time figuring out why you're taking those talents, how they synergize, and in what scenarios maybe that build is not applicable. And you just did that for macro gaming, and I like that because you're figuring out all of it. Why I won. Awesome. Well, why did you win? How did you win? You know, what happened over the course of the game that set that win up?
And when you do that more and more and more and more, you start developing a sense of macro because you start going in your head, I've been here before. I know what happens next. Let's change it so it isn't bad. Like there was this one game I had on Cursed Hollow where we just wiped the enemy team. I pinged enemy boss and a teammate who was a streamer who we're not going to name, but we're going to flame, pinged our boss 5 times, right? The enemy had a fort up in that lane. We only had a keep up in their lane. They ended the game with a Sylvanas push. We lost immediately, right? Like that's the sort of thing you learn to see in the future. You go, oh, their boss pushes our fort. Our boss pushes their core. Which one's more valuable? Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out, right? And when you start reviewing your own macro, you can figure that shit out in 2 seconds flat. You go, oh, Bruiser Camp got capped second on BOE. That's why we won, because it knocked over a fort, whereas theirs got insta-cleared by our tennis or whatever.
So, I mean, you've played pro, you play at a high level of this game. How do you react? Like, maybe we're getting a little philosophical. I'm kind of curious about
Go for it.
Your personality. How do you react to scenarios where you find yourself needing to go with the flow? Because we kind of we talk about this a lot on the show, because usually in the subject of rage or toxicity in a team-based game, where sometimes like we constantly tell people, you're probably right. That play that you're really mad the team isn't doing, yeah, you're probably right. But it's the indecision and the time spent fighting about it and trying to convince 4 other people that you are right to go and do it. It doesn't matter. The moment has passed. Get on board for the plan. Is that something you struggle with doing, because you do have such you've been in so many scenarios so many times that you can see the patterns?
I don't mean to be terribly egotistic when I say this, but I spent a year scrimming professional teams. That's every SL game I play ever, right? That's just every single situation is constant frustration. So you can't just constantly piss yourself off because you are the source of your own anger.
I don't think that's egotistical at all. I mean, it's you're accepting the fact that it is something that frustrates you and you're taking control of it.
Absolutely. Like the only way you're getting over this notion is when you go, wins and losses don't really matter. My SL rank, it doesn't really matter. Am I having fun right now? Am I getting better at the game? Do I feel good? Answer those questions. To hell with your rank. I keep telling this to people and nobody listens. They come back like weeks later in my Discord and then they post again. I dropped from Silver 3 to Wood League 17. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Who gives a shit about your rank? You're the only person who does. Like, are you enjoying yourself right now? Did you do something cool that game? Did you go, oh man, I told our team to pick our boss. We took our boss and then we ended the game. Did you feel fabulous? Like, when was the last time you had fun playing the game? Like, when did you actually enjoy yourself? There's no competitive anymore. There's no professional. Getting better at the game does not make you money anymore, unless you're a streamer, right? You are playing for the purpose of enjoyment. So enjoy yourself. Figure out some way to have fun. If you're not doing that, then reassess your life.
It's the goal of this show. We hope we help you get better, but we also hope we kind of morph your brain a little bit so that you are just more positive in your Heroes games, win or lose. I mean, hell, for me, it's basically my weekly Heroes therapy session, because I can tend to lean to the rage many, many, many times in any given
I would say the easiest way to deal with it is at the beginning of every game, and this is something I say in my coaching over and over and over and over again, right? If anybody here has seen my coaching sessions, you're about to fucking parrot it out loud. Pick 2 things you want to do at the beginning of every game, right? One major and one minor. A minor is something on your hero mechanically, right? Like using Vorpal on Zeratul, and something major is like clearing the waves. Pick those 2 things and do them. And at the end of the game, win or loss, I want you to look back on those 2 things and say, did I achieve the 2 things I set out to do? If yes, then feel good. If no, then strive to do that in the future. Forget about winning and losing. Focus on self-improvement. It's the only thing that matters.
Don't flog yourself over it.
Exactly.
Learn and do it better next time. Anyway, back to Pike Boo's. It was kind of a 2-parter. Do you have general priorities? Any general suggestions for what to prioritize in a team fight?
Figure out what the most important hero on both teams are and play your team fight around those 2 things. Like, figure out where if the enemy team has a Morales, the Morales is automatically the target. Okay, if your team has a Zeratul, the Zeratul is automatically the most important hero. Does he have VP? Is he going to set you up? What's going on? Right? It's not hard to figure out the PowerPoint of a composition. Everybody knows how to get their ass kicked, and everybody knows how to kick ass. Right? Everybody knows how to win. People don't know what to do when they're losing. And the way you get around that is figure out what the enemy team is supposed to do. Don't let them do it. Play a disruption tank, play a healer with a cleanse, play an engage assassin that can drop the ball on them before they can on you, right? Find where they are. Clear your waves so you know where they are, right? Like, just figure out how the comps want to play and do whatever you can to stop that. And if you have no ability to stop that because you got unlucky in the draft or you had to flex onto a hero you don't know how to play, let it go. Next game.
Gib, or Jib, not sure which one, says, I'm curious to know his absolute stay away heroes in solo queue.
Ooh,
You've already said today, pick better heroes as one of your biggest pieces of advice.
I honestly can't think of one for me personally. Actually, I can't think of a hero period that I would say never play this. Every single hero is completely applicable in a wide variety of situations, as long as you're not like... No, actually, we'll take this back as well. You can one-trick your way to GM. You can literally just play Lily right to top GM, as long as you're so good at Lily that like you could beat every team fight, right? You have a win condition there. It doesn't matter what hero you play ultimately to a degree. Obviously, I'm telling you, if you play Greymane instead of Lily, you're going to have an easier time. But as long as you're playing your hero, well, it ultimately doesn't really matter. So in that end, because I've played professional, because my pool of heroes is gigantic, because I had to one-trick every tank at some point or another, there's no tank that I won't ever put myself on in SL. Like, I'll try to stay away from, like, Tyrael with Sanctification, because if my Greymane's garbage, then I can't use Sanctity to do anything, right? Or things like Diablo. If I think the game is going to depend a lot on early game, don't pick a tank that's good late. Pick a tank that's good early, like Varian, right? But other than that, it's always context dependent. Again, I was taught this answer by the hosts of the show, the lovely gentleman beside me right now. It depends.
Wonderful. John Brandon wants to know your thoughts about body language as a tank. What factors should keep a tank in? What factors should a tank keep in mind when it comes to nonverbal communication to his team and the opponent?
If you right-click away from the enemy tank and you create a space, their human instinct is to fill that space. This is how you lead on the opponent tank and cause them to kill themselves. If you are ETC into Diablo, what you do is you stand by a wall, then you move away from the wall. The Diablo cues you, doesn't get the stun, you kill him. This is true for every single tank in every single situation, every single team fight, and every single mentality. You will eventually be able to bait somebody just by right-clicking correctly. Body language in a tank is as simple as, do you know how to play the enemy tank? If so, you know exactly what they're looking for, stop it. Right? If you're an ETC player into a Diablo, as long as you don't have like 70 ping, when they charge, you can press W. Like, as long as you know what they're... If you know how that hero functions, you can interrupt anything they want to do. When you see the Tyrael queue into you, you will start to see the animation cast for the Sanctification. You will bump it and you will interrupt it. Right? When the enemy Malfurion starts walking up towards you all willy-nilly at level 20, yeah, he's not doing it to throw a root. He's about to teleport into you and cast Twilight Dream, so throw your Sanctity down. And then when he blinks into you and you're all holy grounded, just kill him. It's hilarious. You know how to play around the enemy heroes because you've played them. And that's the value of having a big hero pool. When you know how the enemy hero functions, you beat it. And if you don't, you're screwed.
Not that the games went particularly well, but Kyle, you remember that one game... were we on Hanamura in the patron games last week where you were concerned about me having the solo lane against the Imperius?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I got the timing down on Misha charge with Celestial charge. It was hilarious.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
good dodge.
It was good. It was very good. Very satisfying. That was my little victory for the day.
Yeah, it's all you need is little victories, right?
Yep. And then final question of the day. Midnight Fire wants to know, when should you go double tank and how does this change communication in a coordinated team?
Oh, I'm going to try to make this one brief because I could literally talk about this for the rest of tonight. There are 5 roles on the team, okay? There is main tank, off tank, primary DPS, flex DPS, and support, okay? Primary DPS is something ranged. Flex DPS can be literally anything. Main tank is obvious. Support is obvious. So we have off tank, right? Off tank is whatever your offlaner is. Okay, Thrall can function as an off tank. Leo can function as an off tank. Zul can function as an off tank. So can Rag, etc., etc. Literally anything in the off lane can function as an off tank, right? The important thing to understand when you take 2 tanks, when you go Yrel Blaze or Leoric or any of the fat big ones, is you have way more front line than the enemy team. You just walk into them, they can't do anything about it because you're too big and fat. So double tank never went anywhere. People just forgot it existed. Double tank has always been the best way to play the game since Yrel got released, or since Blaze got released, rather. Since Blaze came out and they put enough CC on one hero to be comparable to a main tank, if you pick 2 heroes with that much CC, you win. The reason this happens is because main tanks and tank heroes have more power budget allocated to them than anything else in the game, minus supports. Because one Rhaegar is designed to heal 4 other people. So he needs a crap ton of healing. Like there's a lot in an individual support. The second highest power budget goes to tanks. Because if ETC came out tomorrow, people would be crying in the streets about how overpowered he is. So you're telling me he has a 1.25 second AoE stun. He has a huge knockback that it only has 4 seconds CD at 13. He has a global and he has a 4-second stun. This is the most broken thing I've ever seen in my life. Get out of this game right now. This is ridiculous. The only reason that doesn't happen is because he's been in the game the whole time. If he came out tomorrow, there'd be riots in the streets.
Boy, that puts some things in perspective. ETC has never sounded so sexy to me. You just tell me he's not a giant cowman with a guitar and he's like actually cool looking, and then I'm like, oh my god, I need this hero in my life.
I'm sorry, have you seen his lovely skin selections? You can make him look like any genre of music you please. The only thing he's missing is a violin. Mine
will always be a StarCraft Tauren Marine because I love StarCraft.
Hey, there you go.
From now until the end of days. But yeah, God, that's funny. I never really thought about that. We should have a bit where you send us like 30 seconds each week, Zanehyde, where you just pitch a hero that's already in the game as if it was a new hero.
Just sell something?
Yeah.
Oh, can you sell an Ubrak to me? I need to hear it because I haven't played him enough recently.
Immune to spell power. Hero that literally has a button that says, I am now immune to spell power. Have you ever just wanted to press one button to negate a pyroblast just to make sure the enemy Kael'thas knows how scummy and useless a piece of shit he is for picking that garbage ult? Well, now you can. Press W. You have now negated a 90-second ultimate. Your W is a 4-second CD. That is a good feeling. Also, he has as much CC as ETC. Actually, he has more. I lied.
I miss a Nubarak.
I will make you miss any hero in this game. Have you heard of this wonderful tiny panda? She can literally prevent you from hitting the opponent.
The one you said that you can't carry yourself with?
Well, you can. You just blind all the enemy Deathwings because Unstoppable doesn't prevent blind. Win the game, GG.
That's true.
Oh, that's a really good point. It's a really good point. Oh, man, dude. This is great. This is a good bit. This would be a good 30-second segment. Well, rad. Well, everyone, whether you wrote in to the inbox, whether you sent a question in on the Discord, I mean, heck, we even answered a Twitch channel question earlier. So thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. Zanehyde, thank you for answering them.
For sure.
And I think it's going to bring us to the end of this episode. This podcast is supported by our very, very, very badass patrons. You can be coming into the Nexus patron by going over to patreon.com/ITN. You're going to get perks like access to the patron-only Discord, signups for our patron games that we do every month, and other stuff. So go check it out. Also, a big thanks to our producers, Declan H., Cheesy Bob, Chris K., and Robert M. Typically, we're live Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. However, it's Thanksgiving in the States. This episode's coming out a little bit early because we're going to go eat turkey and take a nap. That's what we're going to do this weekend. But we'll be back next week at Thursday at a normal day, normal time. Twitch.tv/EmuTV is where to catch it live. Every podcast catcher on the planet is where to catch it on the download. Before we leave, Zanehyde, you're our guest today. So where can everyone find you when you're not guesting on Heroes of the Storm podcasts?
Well, as of 2 days ago, I quit my full-time job and tried to become a full-time streamer. I know that's absolute insanity. Trust me, it wasn't the streaming first. The job sucked. But I'm going to be full-time streaming for December and January at twitch.tv/believe it or not, Zanehyde. I know, you never would have guessed that one. If you would like to find my content, there's an exclamation Discord over there that leads to guides, leads to Storm League 101, leads to how to macro maps, and there's going to be a lot more coming out. You will see me on Reddit. You will see me everywhere. I'm going to shove my name into everybody's retinas until they all hate me. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys so much for having me, by the way. I really appreciate it. I thought this was fantastic and fun.
Thanks for coming on, dude. Yeah, you were great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everyone, Zanehyde on Twitch, go give him a follow. It's and congrats, dude. I love that you're going for it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Kyle, what about you, dude? Where can everyone find you?
You can find everything I do. Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to eat some turkey. I'm going to visit my family. I'm doing the whole huzzah. But you can find me while I'm gone over at kylefergusson.com because, frankly, Garrett, I was a badass and re-recorded or pre-recorded all my podcasts for when I'm out of town. Oh. So you won't miss a beat. Yeah. I'm proud of myself.
That's smooth.
Good. Oh, yeah.
That's professional.
KyleFergusson.com. Check out Kyle Explains. Check out DM Gives Inspiration if you're a blossoming 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons man.
You can find me at Garrett Art on Twitter. 2 R's, 2 T's, and Garrett. As usual, I trust you know how to spell art. Everything else is at amove.tv. This podcast, The Angry Chicken for Hearthstone, we just put out a whopping 2+ hour episode. And there's some Heroes crossover because Trixler joined us because he just hosted the $300,000 Hearthstone Battlegrounds tournament that happened last week. And we spent over an hour talking about Hearthstone's new mode with him. And if you got schooled by Zanehyde today in Heroes, well, Trixler can school you in Battlegrounds because I learned quite a few things in that new episode. We're also doing Let's Talk About Star Wars Weekly at the moment. It might as well be called Let's Talk About The Mandalorian. So go find Let's Talk About Star Wars wherever podcasts can be found. Latest episode is already up covering episode 3 of The Mandalorian. Spoiler alert, I really like it. I like this show a lot. If you'd like to hear about how much I like it, you should go subscribe to Let's Talk About Star Wars. That's going to wrap it up. I hope everyone listening has a fantastic Thanksgiving. May your turkey not be dry. May your pumpkin pie be buried under a mountain of whipped cream. And may you just have wins in Heroes of the Storm. Actual wins or personal wins. Whatever the case
Hallelujah.
is.
Yeah.
Hope your games go well. Everybody enjoyed Deathwing. Go enjoy some quick match Qs and PTR because it's been a while since we've had them. Celebrate it. And yeah, I'll end it as I usually do. Good luck and have fun, everyone.
Take care.
GG!